Hi, everybody. I'm Satyan. I run Times Internet. Times Internet is the digital arm of the Times of India group. It's one of the larger media companies in India. So I wanted to talk today a little bit about us, but also about why India is so interesting today from a global perspective. You know, when we take a look at India, comparing it to China and the US, perhaps one of the most interesting things is that despite the growth that we see everywhere else in the world, we estimate that India will see a higher GDP growth rate on a purchasing power parity basis over the next 5 to 10 years. And more important than that, we actually see an emerging youth population in India which is dramatically larger than what we see in other markets around the world. And that will fuel the economic growth that we see over the next 20 to 30 years ahead. But specifically for digital businesses looking at India, the most important part about India is the lack of penetration that's there today. We see somewhere around 20% of the population using any sort of internet service, likely to reach 45 to 50% in the next 5 years. And on an absolute basis, that's about 300, 400 million people that are going to come online in some way in the next 5 years. And specifically when we talk about smartphone users and smartphone users who are likely to use digital services, the growth rate is very, very dramatic, nearly 3 to 4x over the next 5 years. So when we compare it to the economic opportunities in Southeast Asia and China and in the US, the excitement about India is just in the sheer scale and in the dramatic change in size that we're going to see come online in the next few years. So putting it very, very simply, our view is that today there is no more opportune market in the world than India, given these reality factors. Now, the Times of India is actually a 175-year-old media company. It was started as a newspaper way back when. It's the largest media company in India today. It's privately held. But in the last 20 years, it's ventured into pretty much every other type of media in the country, across television, radio, print, billboards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But despite their strength in traditional media, we've actually been very aggressive on digital for the last 15, 20 years. But it's a bit different because, to be very honest, most media companies are quite bad at digital. They have the same attitude that they have towards other media, and they bring that into digital, and it doesn't necessarily work. So the way we've been running Times Internet is a bit different from how most media companies look at their digital businesses. The biggest difference about us is that we're really not one company. Times Internet is actually more of a holding company that owns and operates about 20 to 25 different digital businesses, ranging from news to music to couponing to shopping to local to a number of other categories that we operate in. But in the most simple way, you could almost think of us like a portfolio holder of a number of different digital assets. We run these businesses very independently. And we run them as standalone business units to the largest degree we can, with very, very loose elements of alignment between them. Now, that's worked out well for us, and the reason we think about it this way is that we don't really think of media the same way that other people do. The most traditional way to think about media is a company like a New York Times or a CNN, which is a news company offline coming to online. But we've also seen an emergence of digital-first media companies like a HuffPost or a BuzzFeed. Media companies in music and video like a Netflix or a Spotify. But increasingly, we think of companies like Facebook and even ones like Android and Amazon and Xiaomi as media companies. Because at the end of the day, what is a media company? It's a company that engages with audiences very, very well. And that's what these companies do. So when we think about our own portfolio, we think of it similarly. We run our own news brands like Times of India and Economic Times, two of the largest news brands in India. We've built and partnered with digital-first brands like India Times and CricBuzz, which we own, but also partnerships with HuffPost, BI, and others. But we've built out a level of service-level businesses like Gaana, music streaming service, or Coupon Dunia, couponing service, which actually move down the funnel towards what are less traditional media businesses per se. Now, the question is, why have we done this and what's been the impact of it? Well, the good news is that it's helped us in a lot of ways. One is that we are today the largest reaching company in India outside of Google and Facebook. We touch about 140 million users every month. And actually, just a few months ago, we had our first month where we crossed 1 billion visits, which is a great statement of scale for us. I think we estimate that it will probably touch 2 billion in the next 9 to 12 months, depending on what happens. It's also helped us culturally. Honestly, the reason most media companies fail at digital is because they don't have the right culture for it. They're run like giant companies trying to build new businesses, and it doesn't work. So our ethos has always been run each one of these businesses as though they were standalone startups fighting with every other entrepreneur out there to build their own success. And that's enabled us to really create that sense of ownership in our businesses. At the same time, we leverage the resources that we have as a big company to enable the growth and the success of those individual businesses as well. It's also helped us build a much more diversified business. So unlike most media companies, which are really centered around advertising, advertising drives about 55% of our business, with classifieds and transactions being two very meaningful revenue streams that are likely growing as well for us. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what are the things we're doing now going forward, and where do we see our business going, and hopefully it'll be of some interest to you. We have three major goals that we're broadly chasing. The first one is that as we think of each of these independent businesses of ours as standalone businesses, we want them to achieve their own maximum potential. And so if the theme of this conference is about building a billion-dollar company, our aspiration is that in Times Internet, multiple of our individual businesses have that aspiration as well. So I wanted to spend just a few minutes telling you about two of our businesses which are sort of on that path for us. The first one is Magicbricks. Now, clearly, given Catcher Group and iProperty, this seems to be a theme here a bit. But Magicbricks is the largest real estate portal in India. The reason it's very exciting for us is that from a market size, if you compare the size of the actual real estate industry to the amount of money that's spent on digital marketing and digital growth, it is very, very, very off compared to other markets. Today, only about 10 or 11% of ad spends go to digital, whereas in developed markets, this is closer to 30 to 40%. And so this business is in a very good position to ride that growth and that transition as it happens. We've also done a lot of work to make the product best in class from a user experience. And if I showed you the old Magicbricks, it would have been cluttered with like 100 ads all over the page and pop-ups that would show up and do all sorts of crazy things. But we've really tried to make sure the experience is as compelling as possible. We've also put a lot of energy on this new idea of verifying listings, which over the last year we've gone from 0 verified listings to about 250,000 verified listings, which now is about 25% of our listing base, where we actually go to the site and take photos of the property or directly verify that the property listing that you see is accurate, because trust and credibility is an important part of making this a platform people trust and use a lot more. We're also really trying to push the product to new levels. So we're building a lot around the data that we calculate and that we aggregate to help make decision-making better. So this is something we just recently launched, which are heat maps, where you can actually see how pricing has changed or what pricing is on a square footage basis or supply versus demand in any given locality. So this is one town where in a more popular area, which are the red areas, the price per square foot would be actually maybe 40 or 50% more than it might be on the other side of town. And this may be just an absolute number, but we actually can show you the changes in price using a visualization like this as well. And this is all live on the site today. From a traffic and a user engagement perspective, we've been fortunate to really be sort of solidified in terms of our position in the market. We generally see about 30 to 50% more traffic than anybody else. But the truth is it's still a very competitive market. Any of you who have studied India know that it's probably as irrational as it gets of a market in terms of competition and spending. And so we're very much in that growth phase as much as anybody else is. So this is our very simple goal. We want to take the business to about 3 to 4x what it is today in the next few years. And fortunately, there are enough macro factors that are sort of tailwinds driving this growth for us going forward. The second business I was going to talk to you about a little bit is Gaana, our music streaming service. Now, we launched Gaana. It's similar to Spotify in some senses, but it's really built differently for the Indian market. It's really now a mobile product more than anything. We launched it as a desktop product about 6-7 years ago, but today I think more than 80% of our consumption would be on mobile, and probably 100% of our growth would be on mobile today. We've really, the challenge that we see in India, which I don't know how much is the case in Southeast Asia, is that India is a very attractive market for all the global companies as well. So when we build products, we have to make sure they are competitive or better than what our global comparables are, despite the fact that we're only operating in one market. And we do things to really focus on things that can make this a uniquely valuable product in India, like 2G compression and low bitrate playback and language filters, which are uniquely Indian problems. The best part about Gaana and the thing that excites us about it is just the sheer growth of the product. We've seen about a 700% growth in the last year from a consumption basis, and this is not showing any signs of letting up right now. So, this is a business that still has time to evolve from a business perspective, but if you ask me why this business is one of the most exciting ones we run, is that when you think about a mobile ecosystem where users just don't have that many apps, and they maybe keep a few apps, and certainly they keep very few apps on the front screen of their phone, Gaana is one of the few products that really fits that bill. And so despite the fact that there's probably 1,000 app ideas in this conference hall here, there will be a much smaller set that actually get to a critical mass of users and a much smaller set that get to the critical mass of front page real estate, so to speak, of a user's phone. And this is fortunately one of those products that has that aspiration. So today, I think we're at about 25 or 27 million downloads right now. We're probably going to take it to 100 million active users in the next 3-4 years. And that's the goal here. So this is just a snapshot of 2 of our businesses. We've got a lot more going, and it's not necessarily right to go through all of it now, but it gives you a sense on how we think about our businesses very individually. One of the things you'll notice is they're not branded as Times products. Many people don't know that Gaana is a Times-affiliated business, and we like that. We leverage the media to help grow the awareness and build the product well, but we'd rather these be strong, standalone businesses that stand on their own footing and have their own customer resonance. The second goal is a little bit different. So on one hand, we're building all these individual businesses that are doing their own thing and they're trying to achieve their own aspirations. But there is a reason why they're part of one larger business, which is Times Internet. And we've been very cautious about saying what are the things we really want to think about centrally as one Times Internet. We've taken a very conscious call that in the next year or so, we want to build the richest user profile understanding across all of our businesses that can be comparable to some of the biggest companies in the world. And so today, we're fortunate that we've been able to build a data platform that helps us understand whether a user is listening to this music, reading this kind of article, interested in this kind of property, has aspirations for a job of this sort, who's interested in buying something of this type at another one of our properties, and building a single consistent data layer across all of those. And so this is just a little bit of an example of some of the data we've been able to capture. Now, this is aggregate data, but we've really made it personalized. But we can actually go down to the point of saying, not just people interested in finance, but specifically personal finance, and not just personal finance, but actually loans, and actually not just loans, but auto loans in specific. And obviously, from an advertiser perspective, this helps give them more intelligible and more useful insights. And I think the thing that makes this more different than what you may have seen from many of the ad tech companies that are presented is that this is really an end-to-end solution, right? We are the publisher, we are the data collector, we are the advertising solution provider. And what we think is that helps give us more transparency and credibility in the overall proposition rather than 15 middle layers in between that get you from point A to point B. The last thing, that got really loud, but the last thing that I'd like to talk about, which is one of our new aspirations going forward, is we want to move our monetization capabilities away from just advertising. So what we've done really well for the last 10, 15 years is we get a ton of users, we get them to engage with a lot of our properties, and we sell premium ads. That's what media companies do, that's what we do in print, on television, and that's what we normally did online. We want to move beyond that. So the first step in moving beyond that was building this data platform, which was the second part, so that as we understand our users better, we can actually get closer to the transaction and do more performance-oriented advertising. But the real goal and the real aspiration of how we want to go forward is to actually take it to a point where we can do more with our consumers. So in Magicbricks, we're now at the point where people can actually buy or put the initial payment down to buy property. And that requires us to build a level of intelligence around the proper product that's so good for the user that he can be inspired to actually complete a transaction. Obviously, in our music streaming service, we're trying to convert our free users to paid users where they have additional benefits in doing that with us as well. But most interesting, perhaps, is that in our advertising businesses, where normally you would have seen this as a traditional ad, we want it to be that we could actually complete that ad right here. So when you clicked on an ad, you could actually see a product, have your payment information pre-filled in some way or another, and actually complete an order. And the weird part about this is that it actually doesn't matter who's selling the product. It may be that Flipkart or Snapdeal or somebody else may be the complete end-to-end provider. But if we can create a relationship with our customers whereby we can actually transact with them, Manish, no taking photos, you're my competitor, dude. If we can actually build a product that is end-to-end in some experience, we can make it more seamless for the user. especially in a mobile world where there's so much friction going between this app and that app, and I don't have this app installed, and I have to go download it, and then there's this process there. If we can make this flow more seamless and more fluid, we think we can actually grow the ecosystem overall, whether it be for our own services or for somebody else's. So I think if there's one thing I'd like to leave you with, it's that we really think of ourselves as much more than a media company. Obviously, our traditional businesses are very big, but our aspirations on the digital side are actually in many ways bigger. We think that we're fortunate that we have such a large and engaged user base. And today our aspiration is in saying, how can we do more with them, and how can we enable that ecosystem, that user base to really benefit from what we build. Thank you very much.